House of Run podcast.
What are you into these days? Mostly running, Hal. Running. Yeah.
Look at Bills! Look at Bills! Coming on! Bills is coming on!
I'm not thinking about making the team. I'm thinking about gold in Munich.
What can I say? I got beat by a zebra.
Starts now.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Welcome back to the House of Run podcast. I'm Kevin, he's Jason. houseofrun@gmail.com. This is the Boston preview recap. It's the recap. It's not the preview. I'm all disoriented, Jason. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty disoriented, but you were actually there, so that had to be even more confusing, I guess.
In a way, yes. I think what I meant to say was Boston review, London preview, but
yeah, okay.
let's be honest. We're going to spend the majority of the show on the Boston Marathon. An American woman won, Jason. So what did you go do on Tuesday?
I went to Disneyland. Yeah, I
you
just
do.
really wanted to celebrate Des Linden winning the Boston Marathon. Yeah, so I did go to Disneyland on Tuesday just because me and the wife had planned to do that. And so that's why we could not do the emergency pod. So I am to blame for that. Yeah, this race was obviously, the weather first and foremost, I suppose. But Linden, I guess, like, if you would have told me, like, the exact weather conditions, like, I wouldn't have said, like, oh, then I would have obviously picked the winners. But, like, it would have obviously changed things drastically.
Right.
And Linden coming out on top in a race like that, like, makes some sense, doesn't it?
It makes sense in the same way Meb winning after the terrorist attacks just made sense. Like, no one really predicted it, but then once it happened, it, like, fit in perfectly with the existing narratives that exist. The way I have come to think of the 2018 Boston Marathon is, we always say, before we give predictions, or even when we're just previewing a race, we always say marathons are unpredictable, right? We always just kind of use that as like a disclaimer. And then when it's a championship-style marathon, New York, Boston, World Championships, Olympics, then we say these marathons are really unpredictable.
Mm-hmm. So
those are the two levels. You take about 52 more levels down, and that was this weather. That was the wrench that was thrown into everybody's race on Monday and everybody's predictions. We talked about it last time on the show. We said the weather's going to be bad. There's going to be a headwind. But I'll tell you, I was there. I've never seen weather for any event that I've been at less desirable. Just
right.
in the moments I was outside, when I got there on Sunday, it was snowing. Literally snowing when I walked outside to get in a car to go to where I was staying. Like, that was my first introduction to the Boston weather. The morning of the race, I woke up, the wind was howling. I was staying downtown, so you're blocked from the wind because of tall buildings. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's a little chilly, but it should warm up. Took one step outside the building, proceeded to get blown into a hot dog cart. I mean, it was just immediate. And that was before the rain started. But when I left the race at about 6 p.m., 6:30, in the 10 minutes it took, by the way, shout out to my son if you guys are hearing. I should mention, I'm recording this from his room because he's commanded the second bedroom now. He wants the bigger bed. So I'm recording basically in a 2.5-year-old's room / nursery because my daughter uses this too as the changing table. So I have an impromptu setup here. I do not have the luxurious studio, and he's still somehow managing to make his presence felt. But as I was saying, Jason, as I was walking, I'm continuing my plan of talking 80% of the time on this show, by the way. When I was
that's the way we both prefer it, so I'm good.
No, I'm out after this. It's just a bunch of mm-hms and that's rights after this.
No, that's me.
Walking back at 6, 10-minute walk, I might as well have been in the shower, completely soaked. My backpack was soaked through. I was worried that the electronics and this beautiful mic that I'm now speaking to you on would have been ruined. I had my passport with me as a form of ID because I don't have my driver's license from Texas yet. It like got wet. Like, my bag completely soaked through on like a 10-minute walk. mind you, all the pockets were all zipped up. I mean, it was that wet. And seeing the runners come in, not just the elite runners, but all the runners who walked into the hotel where the media center was, just seeing their faces, it was incredible. I talked to Meb after the race. He looked so cold. He ran 3 hours, right? So it's not like he was just out there walking. Like, he ran 3 hours, and he looked like he had seen a ghost, and the ghost was made of ice, and the ghost wrapped his or her arms around Meb. I mean, it was so bad. So you get the result that you got, but even then, I mean, how would you describe? You're looking at these results, right? You're looking at these top 15s. How do you describe these top 15s in the men and the women's race?
Yeah, it's so absurd. I mean, obviously, first thing you see is like, wow, these times were very slow. Like, 2:15,
tactical,
almost 2:16 for the men, 2:40 basically for the women. I mean, Linden runs 2:39.54 and wins by 4.5 minutes. And just how quickly it unraveled, because as bad as the weather was and it was slow, for the first half plus of the race, it was like, okay, it's still like the Boston Marathon. Like, the race is still going basically how you'd expect, but just a slightly slower version. And I'm sure they're miserable because obviously they're miserable, but it seemed normal. And then I don't even know exactly when it happened, but all of a sudden, races were basically like cinched. Like, Jeffrey Cruey was for sure going to win the race, and like different things. And then just chaos. And like Des Linden starts pulling away, and I see that she's winning. I'm like, this is awesome. The one, of the I guess big four women's U.S. runners who I said couldn't win is going to win.
Yeah.
But I was thrilled. You got to love Des Linden. So I was happy about that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, what's the other, top 5 shaking out? And then Sarah Sellers comes through in second, and they're like, and second place. And I'm like, oh, they mean the second American. Like, this is like the 7th place runner, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who Sarah Sellers is, so this can't be who I'm thinking of. And no, yeah, she finished second. And then Krista Duchesne from Canada, Rachel Hyland, and Jessica Chester.
Yep.
Who didn't even run in the elite field.
Correct.
Rounds out your top 5.
Bib number 2094. Yeah,
like that. I don't know. I mean, that's just completely absurd. I mean, I guess, obviously there's way more Americans than any other country. So you'd expect, if the ultimate amount of chaos happens in a race, like, just sheer numbers is going to prevail. And
right.
I guess that's what happens with the U.S. there. But still, there's no way you would have said 6 of the top 7 were Americans, and Shalane Flanagan was that number 6.
Yeah, she's looking at this. I got 7th, and the 6th American?
Yeah, like, it just doesn't, like, oh, cool, I beat Edla Kiplegat, and, like, in any other Kenyan, East African, anything.
They all dropped out.
Yeah, and I finished 7th. Like, I mean, it's just... Obviously, I mean, for the pro runners, it's, it's just complete chaos. But, hey, it's the job. It's what you got to do. But, I mean, like, for other people, too, I just, thinking about some of the listeners and just the people who qualify for Boston, especially, like, people who qualified for the first time. And, like, Boston's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Like, if you qualify for Boston and you're running for the first time, like, that's, like, a huge, like, bucket list running type moment for sure. And then this is the day you get is just absolutely brutal.
I'm looking at the live, like, mile by mile thing I was writing for FloTrack, just because you brought up a good point about just like how immediately it changed.
Yeah.
And it was like Daska runs Mamitu Daska, who was up front. On mile 18, I wrote, it looks like Daska's lead is holding steady at about 20 seconds as she takes off her gloves and runs a 6:08 mile. No sign of the others at this point. Daska's 30K split is 152.32. Chasir is 152.56. And Linden is 152.57. Huddle, Yoshitomi, and Kiplagat are running 4.56. Flanagan is in 8th with the time of 153.52. Then the next mile, Daska runs 5.56 and has a lead of 17 seconds. Mile 20, Daska passes 20 miles in 2 hours 57. Chasir is only 17 seconds behind. Linden is 8 seconds behind. Then mile 21, Chasir passes Daska and Linden is lurking. Mile 22, Linden in front. I mean, and then everybody just, like, those names, Chasir, Daska, were gone. So it's not just that they didn't mount a challenge back to Linden. They were gone. Like other than Edna Kiplagat on the women's field, every single elite East African dropped out. And I know that there's always going to be attrition over from 30K on, but this was really pronounced. I think at a certain point they just said, this is too cold. I'm getting out of here. One, I don't know exactly who they were an agent for, but one agent or someone who works for an agent was explaining as the runners were kind of coming in after the race. He was saying, if you want to get warm, the best thing to do would have been to finish. Like, it didn't make any sense to drop out at 35K, not just from a financial standpoint, or I mean, I don't know how deep the prize money went, but like he was saying, maybe some of the Americans stuck in just because they knew that the best way to get dry was just to run it in. Because if you stop, you got to wait for someone to you got to wait for the van to pick you up, and the van doesn't have warm clothes. And the biggest thing was getting the wet clothes off of you. And a lot of these runners, they talked about Rupp and Flanagan getting treated for hypothermic symptoms. The best thing to do would be to get the wet clothes off. And if you're walking at 30K or 35K and then waiting for the van to come and get you, it's going to be a while before you can get change. Whereas if you just run it through, then you can get to the finish. But yeah, it just escalated so quickly on both those sides. Do we want to talk about, I don't know, the breakdown of the women's race? I mean, it was just bizarre from basically the halfway point on when Flanagan stops to go to the bathroom and Linden waits.
Yeah, which Flanagan has to stop, which you don't necessarily expect to happen. And the fact, that Linden waits and it doesn't, I think it was only a matter of a short amount of time, but you still think like, hey, this is still the Boston Marathon. These are two runners who both had a chance to finish top 5 or apparently win in this case. So that's just great. Yeah, but I mean, I just don't even know how else to approach it. I mean, everybody, it's one of those races. Linden gets all the credit in the world because she paid every bit to win this. Like, it's not, some people like, oh, like she probably won because of the weather. And like, you can make that argument either way. But if like that's the case, like, okay, she had like probably one of the most brutal wins ever, and I'm sure she would take it 100 times out of 100. But yeah, it's just so crazy. Like, I said, it was, going through your recap here, it made a lot of sense. And even, like, oh, okay, Huddle's not doing as well, and you expect like, hey, a lot could happen in the second half of this race or the last 10K of this race.
Right.
But just, you don't expect literally everyone just to complain. I mean, every runner we talked about like in depth last week, like, no, I mean, Linden, we obviously brought up, but and then you have Flanagan 7, Kiplagat 9, and that's it for the top 15 as far as like runners we like broke down, like, oh, okay, these are runners who have a chance to win, everything like that. And it was just,
they just stopped
completely.
I mean, either the elites dropped out because in their zest to try to win the race, right, it just wore so much out of them with the conditions that they couldn't, or they just made a cost benefit analysis at some point and was like, especially once, I mean, Daska started walking, so I guess at that point, if you can get in an Uber, then you get in an Uber and go home, because if you're gonna be out of the prize money, and maybe you can run another race at some point. People were talking about, well, are there any of these guys going to come and run in London? I don't think that's going to be the case, because just being in the conditions is going to is going to take some time to recover from. But part of me thinks the whole Linden thinking she was going to drop out thing that she mentioned it. I noticed at mile 6 or 7 when they talked to each other, and that was supposedly like the first time she mentioned it. Like, oh, I'm not feeling good, so if you need my help, let me know. Which again kind of goes into this whole Meb thing, this mythology. Like, Meb never just won a race, right? There was always a story that accompanied it, and this is like the same thing. So, maybe the idea of like, hey, I'm having a horrible day. It's horrible out. I'll just help some people. Kind of, it took like the pressure off,
right?
Of like, hey, how ridiculous! Oh, look, I'm going to slow down, and Shalane needs someone to run with after she gets out of the bathroom. I'll run with her, and then within, what was it? 4 miles after that, everybody just started falling off, and Linden was in third, and then she said, well, at that point, I might as well keep going. So then all she had to do was not screw up at that point, right? I mean, just keep going, which in those conditions was no small task, but it's almost like she just kind of stumbled backwards into it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just kind of like plodding along, like, okay, I guess I'll just do what I can to get this over with, get done with it. And yeah, before you know it, like everybody else, I mean, obviously everybody else is having just as miserable a day as she is. Mm-hmm. And it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just, like I said, I mean, Linden in this race makes some sense because she is just such a rock. And like, it's hard to picture really anything like getting her to like drop out of a race or like just completely fall apart. You know, I think we both were talking about she didn't have that ceiling of, you know, Huddle or Jose, who, you know, didn't end up starting the race. That happened after we recorded last week. Or, you know, Flanagan, obviously, who, you know, coming off the New York win. It was just like, no, Linden's going to run her race no matter what. Like, she's just going to do her thing regardless of what everybody else does. And yeah, it pretty much just, I mean, this is.
Well, but she kind of didn't do that, right? I mean, in the whole, like, hey, I'm just going to help you out thing.
That's true. Yeah.
I thought it was strange that she thought she was actually going to drop. I mean, she look at her resume. She doesn't really drop out of races.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those. I mean, I guess this is, like you said, the worst, you know, live sporting event you've ever seen as far as weather and everything. But yeah, it's
or even been to. I mean, I've never, even in high school and college and just anything. It is never this bad. Usually when I watch a race, I'm like, man, I kind of like, at least at the end, I want to get out there.
Yeah, no desire.
No, zero. I didn't want to stand out there for 2 minutes. It was that bad. Other women's race highlights. Well, I guess let's go through the American women here of the big four, and well, big three. I guess we'll talk about kind of what's next. Huddle ran 250. She was outside of the top 15. She had to get a root canal the next day, so hopefully she's recovering well. That's a rough 2-day combo.
Yeah, one thing that's, I mean, literally like dental surgery and this rate, like that's like two things that just had no desire to even, yeah.
But at least you have anesthesia with a dental procedure.
That's true.
This you couldn't. I mean, what do you think for Huddle going forward?
I mean, I think this race you just have to throw out entirely. I mean, also, if you would have told me this kind of weather was happening, I would have said Huddle. I would have doubled down on my Huddle for the win. Like, I would have felt really good about it just because, you know, she's a badass and like just I would have thought this would have done well for her. But I mean, with a race this crazy, the weather this crazy, I think you just kind of get rid of it altogether. It probably doesn't make you crazy about wanting to run the marathon again, but at least pretty much everyone you run from now on will just be like, oh, well, it won't be like Boston 2018, so it can't be that bad.
It's not a gale, so I'll be okay.
Right.
How about Shalane Flanagan? As you mentioned before, she's the 7th place finisher, 246. Throughout that result, although she had spoken before New York City about retirement before she won, there were some quotes from her in this race, after this race, about her saying it would be her last Boston. I don't see her going out like this in Boston. Just don't see it. I'm going to say it now.
Right. Yeah, it's. I mean, how many times throughout that race did she think like, man, I really should have retired after I won New York? like that had to like enter her mind a couple times. Yeah, I mean, I guess, she says the last Boston. It wouldn't surprise me if she came back. I certainly don't think she'll retire on this note. I mean, I could understand not wanting to run some more after this race, but I think, I think we'll see her a few more times. And if she, I mean, maybe she doesn't run Boston, but I'd be surprised if this is it for sure.
Well, I think she'll go back to New York.
Defend there
and then I think once she does that, because look, I don't think she'll say, "Oh, hey, I want to go win Boston." I mean, she'll want to win Boston, yes, but anything I think is a better note to end on than this.
Right.
And again, it's a result you throw out just because the weather and how.
Oh yeah, you don't take anything from it. It's just you can't do a whole lot with it.
Yeah, and anything's going to be a bonus if you do it next year. What about Linden? She said she wants to go through 2020. She was not on a lot of people's lists when we started forecasting who's going to be on the Olympic marathon team in 2020. I think a lot of people had penciled in Hasay and Huddle, and then, okay, who's going to be the next one? But does this put her back into that equation?
I mean, I think, she has to be in that conversation. I mean, she should have been in the conversation before. I will fully admit to, taking her for granted, underrating her, whatever you want to call it. She's just always, like I said, it was you're mesmerized by the higher ceiling athletes, and hey, she just won Boston, so there's for your high ceiling. But yeah, if she's going to run through 2020, I mean, you still have to expect something good from her. It's where this result doesn't change my opinion about her that much.
Okay.
Like she's still she was a very good marathoner who had she finished second here 7 years ago. Like it's insanely impressive that she won this race. That was just a complete mess. But she's always going to be solid, and if she kept up basically what she's been for the past 3 or 4 years for another 2, I guess that wouldn't be particularly surprising. I don't expect her to take some leap forward. Would you consider this a leap forward, of what she did? Obviously, it's a career milestone and the biggest win she's ever had, kind of thing. But I don't know if I think she stepped up to a level she's never been before.
No, I think this is who she always was.
Yeah.
It's just you had a race that matched her strengths, and I'm sure there's been races that she's had in the past where the result was less than she was prepared for, like things didn't align, and this was kind of the opposite of that, right?
Right.
This was everything aligning, and one thing she's said over and over again is you just keep showing up, and eventually you're going to get it, and that's exactly what happened. But anybody who says Linden no way is top 3 when they do the Olympic trials in less than 24 months, 21 months now, right? I mean, it's not that far away. It's less than 2 years. Anybody who says, oh, yeah, there's no way she can finish in the top 3 is lying to themselves. I mean, no, you're not going to get anybody to say that, especially on the record. No one's like, oh, yeah.
Right.
Hey, so Linden, the one who just won Boston? Yeah. I don't think she can finish the top 3.
Right.
Now,
yeah, she wasn't in my, you asked me a week ago, wouldn't have been in my top 3 just because there is a lot of young, really good marathon talent right now. She's certainly on that list of however many women you want to put on there. But the list is constantly getting longer. But yeah, I mean, you can't be surprised if she ends up making that team. At the same time, 2 years away, I can't be shocked if she doesn't. I expect her to run well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I mean, you could.
Who knows?
Well, yeah, you could have Hasay, Huddle, Cragg, Emily Sisson, Laura Thweet. You could have, maybe Emily Enfeld decides to run a marathon. There's others who could be out there, but
Sellers, Highland, Chichester, DeMarcio.
Who's your favorite of that group, of the 2 through 5? Well, what's your favorite story there?
Yeah, and they're all such kind of ridiculous. We got 5 Kurt Warner stories in the same race, which is I don't know if that you're allowed to have that many.
It was a surplus of feel good stories. It was a surplus of bag and grocery stories.
It's fantastic. Sarah Sellers, I think had run her PR was 2:44, and she basically ran that again. She's a nursing student, paid her own entry fee, all those storylines, which are fantastic. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but it's just oh, that's crazy. And if the rest of the top 5 looked like Linden, Flanagan, Kiplagat, that kind of thing, and Sellers was in there, you'd be this is the most insane thing. But then you look at third, and you have a 41-year-old Canadian, who
mother of
228 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, mother of 3. Duchesne, I just want to add this. Mother of 3. But the interesting thing was her goal coming into the race, top 3 in the Masters division. That's what she said.
Yeah, I hope I get top 3 in the Masters division. Oh, I guess I finished 3rd. She said, I think she wanted to break 240 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that worked out.
Well, Sellers wanted an Olympic trials qualifier and didn't get it, but finished second in the race.
Right.
What is going on?
Yeah, and I mean, then you just, you have Highland, who, or I think she was the one who I saw the quote, I hope for sub 240.
Mm-hmm.
But then you end up finishing fourth. You can't really obviously be upset about that.
Right.
And then you have, Jessica Chichester, who's fifth, but didn't start the same time as the women elite, so doesn't get the prize money, which is a bummer. I understand it. I hope Boston gives her something, like, even if it's not like, I guess $15,000 is fifth place money. I don't know, like, find a way to give her something. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But like, she finishes top 5. Like, you could do something cool for her.
Right.
And it's just like these, just story after story where you're just like, that's absolutely crazy. And a lot of these women, their PRs, or at least their what they've run lately, have been like 240 plus, and then they run 244 in this weather. So yeah, I don't even know. I guess I'm not sure if I have a favorite. Do you have one that sticks out? Because they all just seem like they're in the same world, which is fantastic.
No, I don't have a favorite. It was just funny when they brought Sellers and Duchesne in for the press conference, because they had the top 3 people in. Linden had a separate one with Kawauchi, but they were like, tell us about yourselves. And they both just like gave their brief bio. And like, you could see the people in the room, like the stories were just like writing themselves. Like,
oh, yeah.
I'm a 41-year-old mother of 3 from Canada who grew up playing hockey, and and then Sellers, I paid my own way into the race, and I was hurt in college. This is my second marathon ever, and I can't believe I'm here. This is the craziest thing in my life. Like, I'm going to pay back student loan debt. I hadn't heard anybody explain it as well as you did when you said there's 4 Kurt Warner stories in the same race. And Sellers is getting like a lot of publicity because she was the first in that group.
Yeah.
But I mean, it really could have been any of them, because
absolutely,
Sellers, Duchesne, and Highland were only separated by 25 seconds. So I guess it pays to win out of that group. But it would have been interesting, as you mentioned, if it was Kiplagat, Daska, Linden, like it was she finished really among the elites.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, not to say, hey, you finished second, like you got on the line with.
It would have been a bigger deal even. I mean, as impressive as it is.
Unquestionably, yeah. I mean, that would have been even that much more. But like, yeah, if you're Sarah Sellers, like, you go in, like I said, you're hoping for, okay, I hope I can qualify for Olympic trials and whatnot, or whatever, and to just end up, finishing second place, it just is. It has to be so surreal, and it would have been interesting. I mean, you got to see them, get interviewed. I mean, they even in their wildest dreams, I'm sure they had no aspirations of being on the, up there being interviewed because of their, like, I mean, it probably didn't have a lot of PR training and whatnot. So it's I love those stories, and like I said, it just is so crazy to have that many of them together.
Yeah, it was complete shock. I mean, they were shocked during the race because they were passing Flanagan and Huddle, and I wonder how Jessica Chichester felt when she crossed the line 30 minutes later because she was in a different wave, but then to find out later on, I was
fastest.
I was 5th overall, and I
beat Shalane by a minute. Cool.
I mean, that's just insane. I mean, it was. I thought it was an error message when it came up, and someone said behind me, "Who's Sarah Sellers? She got second." And I almost turned around and said, "No, that's the American only board."
That's exactly what I thought.
Yeah. And then I felt glad that I didn't say that when I found out that was real, and everybody else just, I mean, a 4-minute gap from Linden to Sellers. I guess I was so preoccupied with, that and then the men's race and everything like that I didn't even really pay attention. Then when I put my head up, I thought, holy cow. How did this whole thing happen? Should we talk about the men's race?
I think we should. I mean, this is another one that, I mean, Yuki, who we love. I mean, he's a favorite on this show without question. Again, if you would have said, hey, the worst conditions possible you could think of for a marathon, like Kawauchi, wouldn't have picked him to win because we just wouldn't have. But like, it's another one that makes more sense in retrospect.
Yeah.
And couldn't be happier for the guy because like the dude. I mean, was he preparing? Like, did he have prescient knowledge about Boston? Is that why he ran that? What was it, Antarctica Marathon or whatever it was?
Well, it was in
months
Massachusetts. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about the one on New Year's Day when it was 1 degree when he started?
1 degree, yeah. Basically. I mean, he was like, I know what Boston's going to be this year. I'm prepping.
Well, I think he just runs so many races that he's prepared for literally any situation. And he can race in any condition because it's impossible to get good weather in all those races. So he's going to have terrible weather. It just so happened that the one in Massachusetts was the one that was 1 degree. And, this one, like the women's race, just all kind of fell apart. It looked like it was going to form. I mean, there was a while there when Daska was leading the women's race and Kirui was winning the men's race. And I thought, oh, man, this is going to be like the least interesting possible outcome. Like, how did this happen? Like, this is so weird. And Kirui lasted a lot longer. But it wasn't until, with 2-3 miles to go when the lead started evaporating. And it happened really dramatically in those last 2 miles. I guess it was mile 23. He ran a 5:19, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it started to close. And then mile 24, he ran 5:31. But I mean, part of this happened in the same way the women's race happened. I mean, part of it wasn't just, the leader melted down and the chaser ran really well. It was also that everybody in between just disappeared. Rupp dropped out. All the East Africans except for Kirui and I think Steven Sambu dropped out. Abdi Nagy stayed in, but he's from the Netherlands. He represents Netherlands. So, again, you had a top 15 that is primarily American. And, Yuki's a bigger upset than Linden.
Oh, yeah. At the same time, you go, Yuki, like, he's run, 208. He's broken 210, a ton of times. It was just, okay, Kirui and Rupp are in there, like, and, neither of us even put Yuki for top 5. So, that maybe that could have been closer, but it's still, Linden slightly, I would say slightly less, but Yuki could just, what did he do? The first mile he ran in 4:37. Like, what was the craziest thing ever? I don't know what the logic is there at all.
So I got a story coming out. Hopefully, I hope a story coming out on this on FloTrack on what's tomorrow? Thursday.
Yes,
that was by design. He said it. His manager said it. Like, he wanted to make people run the whole distance, and he wanted to, like, shrink the field early so he could see who was there. And when he surged at 12 and when he surged at 15, that was also, like, that was more in, like, just what he described as, like, the rhythm of the race. Like, other people were slowing down, and he just felt good, so he extended it. But that wasn't just, like, a random, I'm going to run a 4:37 and then, like, call it a day. His manager, who's also his translator over the weekend, told me that he said to Yuki the morning of the race, he goes, "This is the day you were born for," right? Because the weather was that. Like, they knew he actually had a chance.
Right.
Because I said, "Hey, did you really think this was possible?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah. 100% they thought it was possible because of what the conditions were. Like, they thought that they could do it." And like you said, 208 guy. We get caught up in the 212s and the 213s that he runs, and you always like to say, "Man, I wonder what he could run if he was just fresh, or if he only ran one marathon, or two, if he only ran 2 or 3 marathons a year, or even 6 marathons a year."
Right.
But yeah, you kind of get distracted by those things and forget, okay, 208 guy winning isn't that far-fetched.
It's a Meb like performance, pretty much, right?
Right. So you combine that with the weather being awful, and you have this guy who's like indestructible and invincible,
his body regenerates like faster than anybody else's,
and just loves to run. I kind of understood the confidence. At first I thought, "Oh, really? That's how you felt?" But he literally told him, "This is the this is the day you were born for. And I think just having that sort of mentality, in a way, is almost the opposite of Linden, right? Like, he goes in thinking, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, where she goes in thinking, maybe this isn't my day.
Right.
Just help out other people. Like, two very different psychological approaches.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it. I mean, and I won't even pretend like I would have thought about it or come up with it, but with the weather, with Yuki, running 437, 451, like, out front, like, that's brilliant. Like, I know it works, so it's easy to say it's brilliant now, but, like, just the kind of runner he is, like, like, I don't know what it would take for Yuki Kawauchi to not finish a marathon. Like, I don't think I think that's like the sign of the apocalypse or something. If he doesn't finish, like, we're all done. But, like, okay, this is going to be the absolute most brutal race that any of these competitors have ever run. Like, just that's the way it's going to be because of the weather. We have a guy who's, like you said, basically indestructible. Okay, let's run out crazy, get everyone off their game who thought we were going to go out in 5:10 and like ease through the first half and make it just complete chaos, and bet on your guy who's most likely to stick it out. Like, even after seeing him do that in the beginning, like, I didn't really think about it until you mentioned, it was, I assumed it was part of the plan because you just don't decide to run 437, but
right.
I didn't get the logic of it until you were really talking about, talking with his manager. And I mean, that really is, it's obviously, it's going to bury you on a good day, a nice weather day. Like, you're just going to end up getting crushed probably by guys who can run 204. But on this kind of day, it really, really, wow. That's I love it.
Guys, this is the first time Jason has ever applauded a positive split strategy.
Yeah, I think. And maybe I think it's absolutely brilliant. Like, I should have, I guess, given it more thought or something. But because I was originally just like, that's really weird. Like, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it makes complete sense. And like I said, it's easier to say it's brilliant when it works. But hey, it did.
Well, even if Karui didn't melt down, Kawauchi was a strong second in that point. And you'd say, hey,
which would have been great.
He did what he could. He's not going to be Jeffrey Karui. Jeffrey Kuri's in a class of his own. I'd like to ask about the 2017 champ, though, here, Karui. 2:18:23, just started jogging. He was jogging it in. Just looked like he had no control over his body, really.
Right.
Is he done? Is that the last we're going to hear from him?
Definitely. That's... finished his second. It's one of those things, like, and you can't know how your body's going to react to that. I guess if you're Kawauchi, you do, because you ran in somehow maybe worse conditions than this, or equally bad conditions this. But, like, just about everybody else, you don't know how your body's going to react. And if you're Karui, you go, hey, I'm the class of the field. Like, Rupp and I, and I'm out here running alone. Like, he looked like the sure way. I mean, people were basically congratulating. I mean, he was over a minute ahead with 3-4 plus miles to go. So it looked over, and then you can't even get on the guy, like, on a race like this, because your body all of a sudden just, like, can't handle it. And how would you know what it could handle in a day like this?
Yeah, I wonder, even if you took out because we've seen, like, meltdown. Those meltdowns are a lot more common than the meltdowns we saw on the women's side.
Yeah.
Right? Remember that one year in London when, like, the lead kept changing because, like, everybody, like, Biwa and, like, Kabete, like, kept surging and then just, like, falling off. And then, like, maybe – I'm sure a lot of it was weather assisted, but it would have been interesting to see if the weather was good, if he just kind of had, like, a horrible rough patch. And then maybe in better weather – he would have fallen apart, but then he would have fallen to, like, sixth instead of second, and Kawauchi would have been, like, third instead of first.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. It's there's so many variables. It's hard to know because there could be some of these runners you go, well, they ran in the worst weather ever, and that's why they did it. And it's like that those same runners could have just DNF'd on a perfect day, and
True.
It just wasn't. Like, it wasn't in them that day. We obviously don't know who's who in that scenario, but. Give credit to Karui, the co-favorite or whatever, and finishes second. Like, he he was as close to his finishing point, like expected finishing point, as any runner in either race.
That's true. Shadrach Biwott gets third. I thought he was in top 5, so I wasn't too far off with Shadrach Biwott because then the Americans went 3, 4, 5, 6. Tyler Pinnell was 4th. Andrew Bumbelow was 5th. Scott Smith was 6th. And then it was Nagy of Netherlands 7th. Cabet 8th. Coolset 9th. And then Daniel Vassallo of the United States was 10th. And I guess he, in any other year, right? Because we had heard of all those other Americans before.
Yeah.
We didn't necessarily think they'd finish as high as they did, but we had heard of all those other ones. We probably weren't familiar with Daniel Vassallo or Daniel Daly or Matthew Herzig, who finished 10, 11, 12, or Benjamin Zawicki, who finished 13th. In any other year, they would have been like the Sarah Sellers story, but instead they're like 9 spots below being the most surprising finish.
And we're just taking 10 minutes off everybody's finishing time, right? Because like I'm counting 3 guys under 2:10 for the U.S., so I just think that's good.
Well, I think you picked. Well, you know what I was doing at the beginning of the year? I was calculating. I wrote the article about like U.S. women's marathon resurgence. And one of the things I was using to measure it was like number of. I think it was like number of. I was using times and places, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was using number of times in the top 60 at the end of the year, which is pretty hard to get in, like
right.
All the marathons. And the other thing was number of top 5 finishes in major marathons. And before this year, actually, I'm gonna pull this up right now. But in this one, you had 4 races.
Yeah, that's
four runners who were there. And I'm gonna pull up the list. I'm gonna try to track down the article here to look at because we're already past the high for the year. High for the last 10 years.
Oh, nice.
I went back and counted since 2008. I'll pull it up right here. Here we go. So top 5 finishes at World Marathon Majors by an American woman. So the highest since 2008, right? The highest number was actually last year. 5 American women finished top 5 at a major, all the majors. So that's Berlin, London, New York, Tokyo, et cetera, World Champs, Olympics, 5. So 4 came in this one race.
Nice.
And then you combine that with Amy Craig, and they're already at 5.
Yeah, 3 men too. So it's a good start. Yeah, not great for the top 40 times or whatever, top 60. What did you say? I don't even forget. But
top 60. So the highest that they've ever got on that is 2. And they already have 1. Well, they're probably going to have 1 this year because Craig's 2:21 is definitely going to hold up to be a top 60 time. So as long as they get 2 more, which, I mean, they could get 1 this weekend in London probably, or maybe from who was running for the U.S.? Stephanie Bruce, Becky Wade. I don't know. Maybe, or Chicago. Oh, I mean, the top times come from strange marathons sometimes. It's not all just Dubai. So
yeah,
it's just weird. I mean, that stat's going to be kind of useless now, I guess, was my point.
Yeah, this kind of changed up everything. But man, I can't get over looking at these results because they do not make any sense whatsoever.
Do you think things will go a little more to form at the London Marathon?
I would expect so. I mean, the greatest field ever is assembled. So, I mean, we got that going for us. I hope the weather is significantly better. Yeah, I mean, I guess we're capped off on Boston wrap up. Yuki, Des Linden. I mean, that's okay. It was a complete mess and not at all what we expected. But like getting those 2 winners out of that's pretty satisfying for the show. I'll like happily take that.
What do you think the odds like would have been to get those 2 winners, like in Vegas?
Oh, like both together?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, you had to go. I mean, what would you say Linden was pre-race?
40-1.
Okay, in that range. What about Yuki?
180 to 1 maybe.
right? So basically multiply those together, and I mean that's pretty much
Oh, really?
what you're looking at.
What if you had a par?
It's
What if
such
you had a
absurd?
What if you had a Linden Cellars Duchesne Highland Chichester parlay?
Then you would own 3 casinos on the strip.
What's the highest they usually go up? Like 999 to 1? Is that the highest they post usually? Or have you seen like 10,000 to 1 too?
I mean, online you'll get some more of those 10,000, kind of things like that. Vegas rarely gives out much more than that. I mean, as far as parlays, you could get higher than that in parlays. Like there's certain like parlay cards that are like 15 teams or 20 teams, and if you get them all right for $5, you win $1 million or something. But yeah, this would be on that level. This is this might. This top 5
right?
might beat the women's high hurdles, none of them medaling from a couple years ago. That was the least likely thing that's ever happened.
I'm saying a 15-team parlay is more common than that women's top 5.
I think it has to be because all of these would have been off the board. Like they wouldn't have even been options.
Yeah, Linden would have been on there, and then
you had to go
everybody else.
Linden and then Field like everybody else because nobody else would have picked
Field, and then in 5th, I'm going to take Field.
I'm going to take Field from not the elites. I'm going to take.
Yeah, I'm going to take somebody with a 2000 number bib.
Yeah, it's completely absurd, but yeah, I mean, hey, I guess in a way it lived up to the hype. In another way, it's slightly disappointing we didn't get to see like the battle of the like American women go at it, but like we got something else entirely.
It kind of, you're right. We knew something would go wrong between when we recorded and when the race, and we got Hesse withdrawing and then a monsoon.
Yes.
I still want to see all 3 of them or all 4 of them battle again.
Yeah.
I want them all to make it to the trials. That's what I want. Because the weather won't be that bad for the trials. I mean, there's no possibility it'll be that bad for the trials.
I absolutely hope not. Yeah.